Can we talk about stories that have impact versus stories that entertain? What are the two differences? What are the similarities?
I mean, this is the kind of core of what Catharsis is about. We called our company Catharsis because this is a word that Aristotle uses in the Poetics to talk about what story really should be in people and in society. A great story should lead people to a cathartic revelation, a new understanding. It should open a new insight for them. It should change them in a good way. And that as we brood over stories together as a society, together we change in a good way. That stories help us clarify our values. They help us decide what is heroic behavior, what is dastardly behavior. That stories allow us to process this. When they're good stories, that they lead to social catharsis. Unfortunately, too many stories that are being produced today, and I hate to use the word story, because they really aren't doing that at all, the core purpose of story. They're more conceived as a product to sell by the entertainment industry, to be much more like an amusement park ride, right? So we're going to make a movie.
Sometimes literally an amusement park ride.
Yeah, really. They either start there or end there, right?
Yes.
No, it's a true, but it's like, well, let's just take 2 hours for people and make them go, and then it's over. And then they walk out after 2 hours and $14 or $30 for popcorn and Coke and then the movie, right? And the question is, what did I get from that? What is any residual benefit to me from my life did I get from that? Now, too many movies, the answer is nothing. Really nothing. That it was conceived to be like cotton candy or an amusement park ride, and that's all it was meant to do. It got you there for opening weekend, you plunked down your cash, and now you're done with it and it's done with you. We aspire to encourage writers to have a much more noble purpose than just distracting people for 2 hours, kind of coax people into the theater to plunk down some money. The contract with the audience for us is we're going to give you something really worth your time, that we're going to give you something that might help you on your journey.
So when you go into the theater, you have your 2-hour experience of thrills and chills, but and that's fine, but it's what you're left with as you leave the theater that you're chewing on. That is that moment of catharsis that we want to have for the audience to experience. And so and that often has to do with the ending and its final image and what the audience is walking away digesting after having experienced this movie, so that it's not just a 2-hour event. It's an event that becomes ingrained into the rest of their lives. And it's something that they're thinking about.
The question for the writer is not what you're going to say to the audience in your movie, but what the audience is going to say to themselves after this movie. I remember a story of one guy that I heard where he saw Finding Nemo with his little boy and his wife, and he's this big guy. He was a Marine and not really a philosopher, but they're in the truck driving home after Finding Nemo, and he said to his wife, babe, am I a good dad? And I mean, that to me is a cathartic story. That you watch this movie, so enjoyable, so delightful, so clever and creative, but at the end, it provoked him to ask himself, am I a good dad? And want to talk about that. This is what we need, and it doesn't happen by accident. The writer has to have something to say, has something to give, something to share, something to propose that we should brood over in their concept. And then that gives this meat to the project. And there's just too many projects that are not solid meat. There's just nothing there. There's nothing really worth sharing. And it's intentionally done that way. I've been unfortunately, the Hollywood development system militates against something meaty because they're nervous that it will turn people off, right? We don't want to put anything in the movie that might make people think, that might make people maybe they won't like it, maybe they won't get it.
And conversely, they don't shy away from controversy, but they do shy away from meaning.
From meaning, yeah. And so this is I think today the challenge for somebody who's a storyteller today is to shake that off. Shake off that I'm here just to create some sausage. That's the word they use in Hollywood for story. It's like we're generating sausage. It's like, no, we're not. We're generating story. Story is a beautiful, noble, important thing. It's critical to a good society, and it's very broken right now. So we want storytellers to kind of really reclaim their noble purpose. The storyteller used to be in ancient societies right next to the chief and the priest as the most important person in the society, because they were going to lead the society to really look at itself to grow and deepen. We need to get that back. Nobody right now would think that Hollywood storytelling is like, leading our society to deepen and grow.
Yeah.
It's pathetic.
And it starts with the writer, and sometimes the writer is the only person in the room who will champion that. And but that's okay. So long as the writer continues to be somebody who champions that, it won't be completely off the table.
When did it change? You said today, so it sounds like of a different era, different years, 70s, 80s, maybe.
It had,
50 years ago, it was still around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there were two central changes. One was when Hollywood got broken up, the studio system got broken up in the post-war period, and basically it went from being movies made by people who love movies to movies made by corporations. The second thing that happened was the blockbuster period. A little movie about a shark, was shot for $8 million or so and made $1 billion. And then it was like, wow, more shark, right? So the blockbuster period became this kind of very formulaic model of a hero-driven, spectacle-driven project. And when we say spectacle, we mean spectacle, right? That something weird and cool to see. And that trumped then the inner story, the story of the character's transformation. And so that's what we've seen. You look at these just like scads and scads and scads of these comic book movies or these, big budget action nothings, right? And they're just about that. They're about providing 2 hours of spectacle, and it's about we'll make this movie for $100 million and it'll make $500 million, and that's all it's about. It's a product to be sold. It's about coaxing the audience into opening weekend, and there's no concern for what is this story really saying? So the writer has to have enough confidence in themselves and their vocation to say, no, I'm not just making sausage. I want to make something that will leave my world and the people and my audience in a better place. And so we're find producers who also resonate with that. Find we want to really renaissance in this storytelling industry. It's going to start with the writers.
And it can happen on the big studio level, and you'll see that there are some that make their way through there that have both, and ultimately they end up doing much better at the box office anyway.
Just thinking back to E.T. I mean, I know that that's a blockbuster from many years ago. There were the toys, there were all the things that went with it, but there was still that emotional
still there.
Very heart and beautiful story about a coming-of-age movie. I mean, coming-of-age movies is almost a dead genre right now. What does that say? We've lost even the faith to say that you would go on a growth journey as a young person. We don't even want to say that anymore. There's almost no coming-of-age movies. I think that's what makes Boyhood so fresh. It's like, wow, we haven't seen a coming-of-age story for so long. So I think that that storytelling is broken. We just have to acknowledge it. It's broken. And we need to look back to the classical era, I think the classical nature of story. We have to look back to move forward. And that we have to say, no, story has a nature, humanity has a nature, and they have to work together. We're going to reclaim the purpose of story in our society and really start to bring people back to the movies again, and so that they walk out and say, that was cool. Like that one I want to talk to people about.
And that's what makes a classic. That's what makes it last for 50, 100 years.